2 complete garbage movies in a row. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's me, and today is my review of The Marvels. 2 weeks in a row, 2 horrible movies, but don't forget to like and subscribe down below so I can help you avoid this crap. All right, quick backstory. 2019 Captain Marvel kind of sucked. Pretty bad. Now, the critics liked it quite a bit more, but when you look at the disparity between what the critics rated it and the people, the fans rated it, there's no denying the fact that it was divisive at the very, very least. The movie made over $1 billion, but let's face it, it didn't do it because it was a good movie. It didn't do it on its own merits. It did because it was just before Endgame, and people thought that they really had to kind of watch it to be able to understand and enjoy Endgame. And for the most part back then, Marvel could do no wrong. Even movies that were just okay, like Thor, they were decent, but not the greatest. Ant-Man, which I actually liked quite a bit, but I like Paul Rudd and I like his sense of humor. Those movies, even those ones that were the bottom part of Marvel, still performed pretty well. And generally, you could go to a Marvel film and enjoy yourself. But then Captain Marvel came along. And just before Endgame, we went and saw that, and it was horrible. It was a disaster. Terrible writing. No one really liked Brie Larson in that film, and to this day, she gets tons and tons of hate. And I think that's part of the reason that this movie is the disaster that it is. Because they knew the fans didn't like her, and they knew that they had Ms. Marvel on Disney Plus. That show was actually okay, it was decent for, I think, younger crowd that kind of engaged that a little bit more. But there were some hopes, and even myself, listen, I don't want to go see a bad movie. I don't want Marvel to crash and burn, although I think that's probably best at this point in time. I want it to be a success. So I went with high hopes. Maybe they can pull it off. Maybe they can pull it together and do something well. Although a lot of the rumblings were not going to make that come true, but I was hopeful. And I couldn't have been more wrong. Oh my God, this movie from top to bottom is horrific. It's awful. I'm almost speechless. I could literally just stop and say, it's terrible, don't go see it. But I do have to talk about it a little bit. Okay, so what makes it a disaster? The rewrites, the reshoots, the reimagining of what they were trying to do with this film are so blatantly obvious. It's so in your face that it's impossible to ignore. And at this point in time, even with all the garbage that's going on with Disney and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's hard to believe, and I mean this, I'm gonna say this right to the camera directly, it's hard to believe they even released this film. In the state that it's in, it's frickin' a disaster. Honestly, I think that Kevin Feige should have shelved this. They should have thrown it away, tossed it into the garbage, and never looked back. And the reason is because in the state that it's in, I don't care how much money they can kind of recoup, which I don't think is going to be a lot. Most of the analysts are tanking this thing. But here's the problem. You're going to do so much more damage to the brand, if that's possible, to the actresses and actors in this film, and the characters that they play, you'll never recover from that. You're going to snuff out their existence because this film is that bad. At this point, whether it's a show, whether it's a film, they are literally putting the proverbial nail in the coffin every single time something comes out. It gets worse and worse. And I think it's time to stop. They need to take a breath and realize that what they are doing and where they are going with this universe is nothing but destructive to their own brand. Okay, now can it be that bad? Is there any positive whatsoever? Yes, there is a positive. And that is that Marvel continues along with their consistency of their villains. The bad part about that is they're freaking horrible. All right, so Zawe Ashton plays Dar-Benn, and I love some of the, let's just say the alternative media who talks about this character. And it's funny because they're like, oh yeah, they changed it a little bit from the comics. And as if with all things Marvel lately, they changed it from a guy to a girl, male to female. Why? Who knows? But it was just a little minor change. No big deal. The biggest problem with the character actually is not that it's male or female, It's the fact that there's just nothing to connect you with that character. So one of the greatest things was Joker, okay, Joaquin Phoenix in that. You didn't condone what he did, but you understood it from all the tragic things that happened to him. And you watched it and you couldn't help but feel bad for what happened to him. And of course, he's a horrible, horrible person, did horrible, horrible things, and you don't condone it, but you understand it. This had no arc, had no development of that story for Dar-Benn. So it was like, you just watch it and like, Disney's like, oh, look, there's a bad person right there. They're the villain and you're supposed to hate them right now, okay? 3, 2, 1, go ahead and hate. As another side note, please comment down below. I want to hear what you guys have to think about this film. And as a little side note, I'm going to say this. Guardians of the Galaxy, #1, the first one. That movie was spectacular, and I never saw that coming. I watched the trailer, I thought, not going to like this movie, and I watched the film, and I was blown away. You cared about every single character. They didn't take an entire movie or several movies to develop those characters. They just told their backstory well enough, in my opinion, perfectly, for you to appreciate and understand each character, and you cared about them in a very short period of time. This film does none of that. None of that. For any of the characters, really. You're expected to know them, appreciate them, and so on and so forth, and they don't give you any reason to really care. So on the one slightly positive side, Iman Vellani, she actually does a really, really nice job. Yes, she's playing a younger person, somebody who's kind of sweet and innocent, and you can care for that. I think that she's actually putting forth the best effort on screen of the entire film. But again, it's just not enough to carry the film. Also, I've got to give a little bit of props to some of the fight scenes. They're actually pretty decent, and I do like the aspect of them switching powers and warping from one place to another. That part was kind of interesting, and you got this kind of exciting experience for those, but in between the fight scenes that were somewhat decent, you have dialogue that is some of the worst dialogue I have ever experienced in any film. And I mean it, any film. And let's face it, there's a certain blueprint of a Marvel film where you have your character, you have an evil enemy villain, and then you have action scenes, and of course you have comedy. And in this film, the comedy just didn't land for me at all. It was just so goofy and childish, and it just didn't make me like snicker or laugh. I was like, I guess that was a joke. Oh my gosh. I don't even know how to talk about this. The tone of the film was all over the place. It was like herding cats, basically. They weren't sure if they were going to be slapstick or serious or comedic or sad or emotional. And movies that are great, they can have all of those things wrapped up into one, and there's this nice kind of natural flow of things, this cohesiveness of the story moving up and down and doing these things naturally, and it comes across wonderfully. This film looked like they just took a bunch of ideas, a bunch of tones that they weren't sure what they were going to do, they tossed it into the Bass-O-Matic, plugged it in and put it on Chunky, and that's your film. All right, also, there's a mid-credit scene that everybody's gonna talk about. It's gonna be all over the place and everything else. I give the filmmakers here 0 credit for this. None. Zip. Zilch. Nothing. Why? Because you basically put out 100 minutes of garbage, of crap, that is virtually unwatchable. You'll never want to go see this again, in my opinion. And then you're trying to throw out a teaser thing again, like they constantly do, where you used to get all excited and, oh my gosh, look what's coming, look what's possible in the Marvel universe, this is gonna be, and you realize that they're not delivering these things anymore. They're showing you things and then delivering you garbage and expecting you to eat it up. Expecting you to be like, yay, look what's coming, instead of realizing. And I think people are beyond that now. I think people are realizing right away that this 100 minutes is garbage, and the next thing you're gonna show us is not gonna be that, it's gonna be garbage, it's gonna be a bait and switch, or a terrible written story, or it's just gonna be crap all over again. That's the truth, that's where we are, and that's a shame. And Marvel, you have no one to blame but yourselves. You've done this. your writing, your lack of direction, taking iconic characters that people care about and destroying them in front of our very own eyes. All right, so what do I ultimately give this movie? I'm giving it a 25%, and that's being generous. This movie is such a disaster. I'm almost speechless, and making this video for you guys is something that I love to do. But this movie was so painful, I dreaded this. I was like, oh my God, I gotta do this. I gotta give them the honest opinion about it and tell them how horrible another Marvel film is. Do I recommend you see the film? 100%? No, absolutely not. It's horrible. We know that they have the budget. We know that if they give themselves time, they have the technical know-how to do all these wonderful special effects, CGI, things that look and feel authentic and real, and they're not delivering that at all at this point. And besides that, regardless of that, okay, can they do it? Sure, they can. But the writing, the story, the acting, all of these things have got to be top-notch to really get the people back. And at this point in time, they don't have it. And I would say they don't deserve it. Don't give it to them. All right, buddy, that wraps it up for me today. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Hopefully, oh my God, hopefully, with something good. Actually, I do have something good I'm gonna go see tomorrow.